Have you ever had a moment where you knew exactly what you should be doing, but still couldn't get yourself to do it? You tell yourself you're going to start tomorrow. You make a plan. You even feel motivated for a short time. And then somehow, nothing happens. The plan stays in your head. The action never follows. And the worst part isn't just that things don't get done. It's the feeling that comes with it. A quiet frustration. A sense of guilt. A growing belief that something might be wrong. You begin to wonder, why am I like this? Why can't I just do what I know I need to do? Why does everything feel harder than it should? This experience is far more common than most people realize. From the outside, it may look like a lack of discipline or laziness, but in reality, the situation is often much more complex. Because motivation is not simply a matter of willpower. It is influenced by how the brain processes effort, reward, and energy. When something feels meaningful and achievable, the brain is more likely to engage. But when something feels overwhelming, uncertain, or mentally heavy, the brain may resist. This resistance does not always feel like a clear decision. Instead, it shows up as hesitation, distraction, procrastination. You might reach for your phone without thinking, open multiple tabs, scroll for longer than you intended, not because you don't care, but because your brain is trying to avoid discomfort. This is where many people become stuck. They interpret this resistance as a personal failure. They think, I must not be motivated enough. I just need more discipline. So they push harder. They try to force themselves into action. They set stricter goals. They expect immediate result. But instead of improving the situation, this often makes it worse. Because the underlying problem has not been addressed. The brain does not respond well to constant pressure without relief. When effort feels too high and reward feels too distant, motivation decreases. Over time, this creates a pattern. Tasks begin to feel heavier. Starting becomes more difficult. Even small actions require more energy. At the same time, daily life continues to demand attention. Messages, responsibilities, decisions, and information all compete for mental space. This constant input can lead to what is known as mental overload. Even if the body is physically rested, the mind may feel exhausted. And when the mind is overloaded, motivation naturally declines. Another factor that often goes unnoticed is the role of clarity. When a task is unclear, the brain has to work harder to figure out where to begin. This increases resistance. On the other hand, when a task is simple and clearly defined, it becomes easier to start. This is why people may find it easier to complete small, familiar actions than larger, more complex ones. It is not a matter of importance, but of cognitive effort. Emotions also play a role. If a task is associated with stress, fear of failure, or past frustration, the brain may avoid it. This avoidance is not always conscious. It can happen quietly, shaping behavior without clear awareness. Over time, these patterns reinforce themselves. The more something is avoided, the harder it feels to approach. And the harder it feels, the more it is avoided. This cycle can continue for a long time. Which is why many people feel stuck, even when they genuinely want to change. But understanding this process is the first step. Because once the pattern becomes visible, it becomes possible to approach it differently. When motivation feels low, the instinct is often to look for a sudden surge of energy or inspiration. However, this approach can be unreliable. Motivation is not something that always appears on demand. Instead, it is often shaped by the conditions around it. One of the most effective ways to improve motivation is to reduce the effort required to begin. This does not mean lowering standards. It means adjusting the starting point. When a task feels too large, the brain perceives it as a high-cost activity. This creates resistance. But when the task is broken down into smaller, more manageable steps, the perceived cost decreases. For example, instead of focusing on completing an entire project, it may be more effective to focus on starting a small part of it. Opening a document, writing a few lines, or organizing initial ideas can be enough to begin. Once action starts, momentum often follows. Another important factor is environment. The surroundings in which a person works can either support or hinder focus. Small changes, such as reducing distractions, organizing the workspace, or setting clear boundaries for certain activities, can influence how easily the brain engages. This is because the brain responds to cues in the environment. When distractions are present, attention is divided. When the environment is simplified, attention becomes more focused. Energy management also plays a role. Motivation is closely linked to available energy. When energy is low, even simple tasks can feel difficult. This is why factors such as sleep, movement, and daily routines indirectly affect motivation. Regular movement, for instance, can improve circulation and support overall energy levels. Even light activity can create a noticeable shift in how the body and mind feel. Timing can also influence productivity. Different people experience natural variations in energy throughout the day. Identifying periods of higher focus and aligning important tasks with those times can make a significant difference. At the same time, it is important to recognize that not every moment will feel productive. Expecting constant motivation can create unnecessary pressure. Allowing for variation while maintaining consistency often leads to more sustainable progress. Another approach involves redefining how progress is measured. Instead of focusing only on outcomes, it can be helpful to recognize the value of effort and consistency. Completing small steps regularly can build a sense of progress, which in turn supports motivation. Over time, this creates a positive cycle. Action leads to progress. Progress reinforces action. Emotional factors should also be considered. Being overly critical can reduce motivation. When effort is constantly judged as insufficient, the brain may associate action with negative feelings. A more balanced approach involves acknowledging effort without excessive judgment. This creates a more supportive internal environment. It is also useful to understand that motivation does not always come before action. In many cases, it follows action. Starting, even in a small way, can create a shift in how a task feels. What initially seemed difficult may become more manageable once engagement begins. This challenges a common assumption that one must feel ready before taking action. In reality, readiness often develops during the process. Over time, these small shifts can accumulate. Tasks may begin to feel lighter. Starting may become easier. Consistency may improve. While this does not eliminate all challenges, it changes how those challenges are experienced. Motivation becomes less about waiting for the right feeling and more about creating the right conditions. And when those conditions are in place, progress becomes more natural. Because sometimes the problem is not a lack of motivation. It is a system that has not yet been adjusted to support it.